Welcome to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Neil, and with me today is Steve Tang, Executive Vice President, Chief Technology Officer, and Head of Engineering at iconectiv. iconectiv provides services to secure digital identity, data exchanges, registries, and other information as a service offerings. These address numbering intelligence, know your customer (KYC), know your business (KYB), fraud prevention, as well as network and operations management for the global communications industry. Steve is responsible for consolidated software development, quality assurance, system and usability engineering, and supporting business partners with emerging technologies. He is a seasoned professional with more than 20 years of experience developing highly scalable, robust products that enable the seamless interconnection of devices, applications, and networks globally. Steve joins us as part of our exclusive editorial segment on generative AI for network management. Welcome, Steve. Great to have you on today's episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the Fast Mode podcast this morning, Tara.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's jump right in. How have advancements in AI, including generative AI, contributed to the rise of online scams? Now, this is like a big topic and everyone loves to talk about it. So let's hear it from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate you having me on today to talk about this topic. I think it's incredibly important, especially as we see the rise of AI technologies really becoming much more accessible overall. And with regards to scams, obviously there's nothing new. They've been there since the beginning of time. We all know about voice robocall scams. We know about text message-based scams. But what we're seeing now with AI and in particular generative AI is really truly unprecedented at this point. When you think about it, the fraudsters have actually gained access to this tool set that is just incredibly powerful. And it is allowing them to really operate at a scale that we really haven't seen before with a level of sophistication that didn't seem possible just a couple of years ago. So when we look at it, what I think is incredibly concerning is how AI is creating these increasingly convincing deceptions. And we see the fraudsters really using this generative AI technology in two very critical ways. The first is they're able to really automate and scale their operations really well beyond what we thought was previously possible. So it's incredible. But more importantly, is they are creating these scenarios that are incredibly convincing, and they're using technologies like deepfake voice cloning. And the real game changer when you look at those two items is the quality of these scams. So when you think about it, and a scammer can perfectly replicate someone's voice, they can really create phishing attempts that are very personalized to you, and it really fundamentally changes the overall threat landscape, and not just to consumers and victims alike, but to businesses, to telco providers, and that's what really makes these scams so dangerous. Is the quick rise, its prevalence, and they're becoming really increasingly difficult for people to detect, even for people who might typically consider themselves to be really tech savvy. So so the rise of these scams is definitely a big concern.
Wow, interesting. Why are these AI-powered scams more difficult to detect using conventional tools that we have?
Right. So when you think about historically, you or I, if you get a suspicious call, you could spot that scam from the IRS. But when you get a call that sounds exactly like a loved one, someone you know, or someone within your management chain that maybe you don't interact with as much, a lot of your natural instincts, or those sort of red flags that come to mind when you see some of those traditional warning signs, they often fail you. So we see this fundamental shift from what I might call an obvious scam to where there's clearly errors or something is highly scripted, to what is more of a emotional exploitation type of scam. So, for example, in a traditional scam call, you might notice things such as poor grammar, Maybe the dialogue is very much scripted, or we're all trained. We've read the articles say if someone says something is highly urgent, you got to act right now. You would say, oh, that doesn't sound right. Let me do some verification. But in today's sort of paradigm of using generative AI and AI technologies where you can clone a voice with just this almost scary degree of accuracy, it really changes things. So imagine you get a panicked call from someone who sounds like your grandchild and saying that they've been in some form of an accident. And, we often think of these things as really big payments, and they could be smaller payments, $50, $100, and you do that at scale. All of a sudden it becomes very, very lucrative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, or even as simple as someone calling, and they may not be asking you to do something, but I could call you and imitate someone in management that you work with and say, look, I need to contact the CFO urgently. I don't have his or her number. Can you please give me their personal cell phone? And in that way, you're actually mining and fishing for data that you might not be able to easily get in the past. So. And it's not just theoretical. One survey found that I think over 35% of organizations have already experienced some form of deepfake voice type of fraud. But what I find even more staggering is McAfee had done some research, and of people or victims who had come in contact with or were targets of AI-enabled scam calls, over 75% of them reported some form of financial loss. So you think that is actually staggering when you think about it. Yep. You don't need to go really far and wide and hoping for a sliver of the population to sort of fall victim to it. That's over 3/4 of these folks who encountered AI-enabled scam calls actually had some type of financial loss. And what makes this really challenging, back to your question for the telco industry and companies alike, is that these scams are actually bypassing a lot of our traditional detection methods, in that the voice sounds real, the call and the emotion and the heartstrings that they're tugging on, it's very convincing. The urgency is no longer scripted. It really feels genuine. And it creates a very complicated challenge for the public. It creates a complicated challenge for businesses and equally so for regulators. And so really the interesting part, I think, is this, that AI, while it's really enabling these sophisticated scams, it is also providing us with tools to fight back as well. So I think there's a silver lining there.
Mm-hmm. Wow, amazing. So I was just thinking, as you were talking just now, that given this new form of attacks, the AI-based attack, the Gen AI-based attacks, I suppose we are now dealing with a different breed of threat actors, right? We are dealing with people who have access to these very complex applications and stuff. So is that something that we can expect to make things worse because you are against bigger guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I would like to refer to it almost as the democratization of scam capability, that you can easily go online and get access to a number of these tools. Scary thing would be this podcast alone has more than enough audio sampling to replicate our voices. So it's really something to be cognizant of, and it's really important that we have the right defenses in place to be able to prevent these sort of this evolving landscape of different threats.
Mm-hmm. Because usually when you receive certain emails or certain calls, you would be thinking there's like maybe just a couple of guys behind this whole activity. But when you see Gen AI kind of attacks, you know that it takes more than just a couple of guys. It gives a bit, it sounds a lot more riskier than the things that we used to face in the past, right? So
Yeah,
I guess, yeah. So okay, so moving on to you just mentioned telecoms, right? So how can CSPs use AI, turning things the other way around, to combat fraud and protect subscribers from scams? Now we're using the very tool that helps threat actors to now help us. Right. So, and also the role of authoritative telephone numbering intelligence in this.
Yeah, sure. So in just as we were talking about, in much the same ways that criminals use artificial intelligence to now perpetrate these really sophisticated scams. CSPs, telco providers, et cetera, they're using AI to build some relatively sophisticated defenses as well. And the critical thing here, which I know we all understand, we've been talking about AI for a while, is AI is really only as good as the data that it's trained on. And people always say garbage in, garbage out, but in the realm of telco and combating fraud and training these models, we need to think of it more as authoritative data in and accurate data out. So if we're sort of to break this down, when we talk about training these AI models for fraud prevention, we really need two key elements. The first thing is we certainly need comprehensive data as it relates to the telephone number, their ownership, the history of the number, specific characteristics, the behavioral patterns, etc. So the data set needs to be comprehensive, needs to be authoritative. And the second thing, which is crucial beyond being authoritative, is the data really needs to be updated on a highly regular basis in near real time. Because the way we need to think about numbering intelligence and phone numbers in general is the phone number is essentially your key to your digital fingerprint. It's your presence relative to your digital identity, and it's constantly evolving. So the ownership, the history, the behavior, the characteristics, there's a pattern to it. It's being updated, and you need that information in real time. So when we feed this authoritative numbering intelligence, we'll call it, into these AI models, they actually become remarkably adept and good at spotting potential fraud. AI can pretty quickly determine if a number's behavior matches the historical or known patterns, if the number's been ported to another provider, and if it's showing any of these suspicious changes or characteristics, or just basically something doesn't quite add up, the system can actually trigger additional verification steps, things like asking for extra identification, or if it's transaction related, you stop the transaction, you do additional review rather than letting it through. And, the powerful thing about sort of merging numbering intelligence into these AI defenses is that it's an approach that works in a proactive manner. So instead of reacting to known scam patterns, you can identify the suspicious activity before it even reaches the subscriber.
Brilliant. So I'm guessing that because you need this numbering intelligence and you receive calls from people who are subscribed to different operators, right? Do you need a central database that collects all these numbers and intelligence from all the CSPs?
So in terms of collecting the numbering intelligence, that would probably be difficult. But what you actually need is the ground source of truth in terms of the characteristics of the numbers, and you match that against the patterns that you're seeing within the CSP as it's routing traffic. So key to that really is making sure that you have up-to-date numbering intelligence in terms of ownership and characteristics.
All right. Okay. Brilliant. Now let's take a look at iconectiv. Can you tell me more about your solutions and how they help CSPs deploy AI-powered fraud protection?
Sure. So at iconectiv, we've taken a specific approach to this overall challenge in combating AI-enabled fraud, and we've done that by really focusing on what we believe is the foundation of effective fraud prevention, which is authoritative numbering data. So the solutions that we've built them around some key principles, in that the data needs to be trustworthy, it needs to be neutral and independent, and above all, it needs to be up to date, near real time data, and that's really the sort of the essential principles for ensuring that we can protect ourselves against AI-powered fraud. So the databases that we have are comprehensive sets of data. They track everything from recent porting activity to line types, network location information, and so forth. And this is really crucial in preventing some of the most common sort of fraud schemes that we see today: SIM swaps, port out fraud. But what really makes the solution really effective is how frequently we update the information. Because when you think about fraud, especially as it's being committed within the telco environment, the accuracy that you get the data in, making sure that it's real time, is really important, because you see that the fraud is really perpetrated in that sliver of time of when a change actually occurs. So, someone has somehow taken over your number, before you even realize, in that 1 or 2 or 3 hours before you realize, that's when the fraud is being committed. So having that information in real time to combat against fraud is really key. So when a telco or a telecom provider takes our number intelligence data, they integrate it into their AI systems, they're really able to do 3 very critical things. The first thing is they're protecting their subscribers from these potentially fraudulent calls or texts, and they're doing so in a way that is much more effective. The second thing, sort of building on the first, is that they're building a greater trust with their customers. They're really demonstrating that they're taking this seriously, they're being proactive about it. And the third thing is, when you combine the first two, which is probably most important from a business perspective, is they're protecting their revenue and they're protecting their brand reputation. And as you and I know, it's really something that's increasingly important, especially in today's market, being how competitive that it actually is. And overall, these efforts that telcos are undergoing to do this, to combat fraud, in general, it's actually helping to bolster the general public's faith in the telco industry, that we're going to protect them from these fraudulent text messages and phone calls, while also helping the businesses boost their revenue. So as we sort of continue to see the evolution of these AI-enabled scams, because they're not done, right? So you block one, they come up with some other way to try to scam you. These really sophisticated deepfake voice type clones, it's a challenge. So having this foundation of authoritative numbering intelligence actually is going to become increasingly critical. Not because it's about stopping the scams today, but having that numbering intelligence sort of helps protect you, or essentially protects you against whatever's going to come next, because it ties back to your digital fingerprint and your digital identification, which is essentially your phone number.
And do you see a lot of demand for these solutions in the coming years?
Absolutely. Fraud's been there since the beginning of time. It constantly evolves. We know it's never going to go away. The phone number being a key digital identifier, key digital fingerprint, is consistently going to be a target. There's a lot of information associated with that, and it will continue to evolve. There's going to be additional threat vectors that come up, and we plan to continue to keep ahead of that, and making sure that our authoritative numbering intelligence solutions continue to be a foundational element, using sort of AI-enabled defenses to combat against the AI-enabled fraud that's occurring.
Wow, I think you really, explained very thoroughly about, the authoritative numbering intelligence. I think, for all users, we talk a lot about scams and stuff, but we don't know the kind of technologies that we actually need to put in place, and I think this is such a brilliant solution that a lot of CSPs definitely need. Okay, so and that said, I think we are at the end of our session. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today and for explaining all these concepts and how CSPs can address them.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, great. And to everyone tuning in, thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more, visit iconectiv.com and follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session. Bye-bye.